it's your girl Regina coming at you guys with another video. Guess what? I got my computer fixed. My brother was so kind enough to help me get it fixed. He works as a software developer, but he has a background in fixing computers. So when my puppy, bit the corner of the screen, I ordered the screen and he fixed it. He said that it apparently took him 3 hours to fix it, so now Nico is staying far away from the laptop as much as possible. How you guys doing? I'm doing alright. I've been spending a lot of time with Nico. I haven't worked much this week because not a single job was available that I could go to. Thursday, we had an emergency with Nico. Luckily, he's fine at the moment. We found out that he has a hernia. So now we're keeping an eye on that. Yesterday, I was in New Jersey, spending the day with my best friend, because her birthday was on Tuesday. So I figured, before the holidays, let's meet up, let's have a good time, and it was amazing. And in all of this, I've been reading a lot of audiobooks, because at work, if I'm just simply sitting there and supervising students, I don't really get to do much except for listen to audiobooks, since I have Bluetooth-enabled hearing aids, and it just works out. Today, I want to do a book review on a story called Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. I read it over 3 days, listened to it over 3 days, and let me tell you, it was mind-blowing and fantastic. I'm going to get into the summary of it, the synopsis, and then I will go into a little bit more details as well. In the early 1900s, teenage Shinja, the adored daughter of a crippled fisherman, falls for a wealthy stranger at the seashore near her home in Korea. He promises her the world, but when she discovers that she is pregnant and her lover is married, she refuses to be bought. Instead, she accepts an offer of marriage from a gentle, sickly minister passing through on his way to Japan. But her decision to abandon her home and to reject her son's powerful father sets off a dramatic saga that will echo down through the generations. Richly told and profoundly moving, Pachinko is a story of love, sacrifice, ambition, and loyalty. From bustling street markets to the halls of Japan's finest universities, to the pachinko parlors of the criminal underworld, Lee's complex and passionate characters, strong, stubborn women, devoted sisters and sons, fathers shaken by moral crisis, survive and thrive against the indifferent arc of history. So, from the summary, it seems like it's only Sunja's story. However, the story doesn't begin with Sunja. In fact, it begins with her grandparents in the 1910s, when Japan initially conquered Korea. And if you guys don't know, and I didn't before the start of this, that Korea was a Japanese colony for a while, and it was truly a colony for at least one generation, for an entire generation. So it was from 1910 to 1945. So it begins with Sunja's grandparents. They're little, like, poor um, couple who give birth to a son whose foot isn't as good, and he has a cleft lip, as I did. And I found that really cool because that's a really cool way to relate to a character. I had a cleft lip when I was born, and my doctors fixed it at the age of 3 months. Now, because this is the early 1900s, I don't think they had surgeries or options available to people to fix cleft lips and cleft palates. However, it is entirely possible that the surgery and the treatment existed at the time, but probably not available to the impoverished families. So this crippled son is very smart. He went to school. He learned his reading, writing, arithmetic, and so after that he started working with his father. And after that, he married another woman, a woman, who then gives birth to Sinja after multiple miscarriages. Now, Sinja is the only child and only daughter of the family, so she was shown a lot of love and affection. Her father always valued her, and the book stated that in Japanese culture, that parents don't often compliment their children or say anything like, oh, good job, son, good job, daughter, because they believe that if you compliment your child, they will get one over you. So it's almost like spare the rod, spare the child, almost. But Sunja doesn't grow up like that. Her father ends up dying, so she is helping her mother run a boarding house, which their grandparents started. And then the daughter-in-law continues on, and she falls in love with a man, and and from here the story takes place. And I find it really interesting because this is the early 1900s, things such as teen pregnancies or getting pregnant before marriage was a no-no. It just was so unheard of. Like, forget the United States. Japan and China, Korea, India, very conservative countries. Very, if not religious, but there is such a thing as morals and values, and they're given much more importance at that time. And so, this girl, she's pregnant, and yes, the easy way would have been, and I'm not saying that if you have a teen pregnancy, you're immoral. Like, I don't subscribe to that. But I'm just looking at it from that point of view. So, yes, the easy way out for Shinja would have been that, yes, she lives as a mistress, or not even that, but just accept the money from her son's father and just live comfortably. and so would her mother. But she decides, as a 17, 18-year-old, that she doesn't want to do that. So no, if I'm going to if I'm going to be with someone, I want to be with them fully, you know. So she tells her mother, who doesn't have the typical, how could you do this? You're a disgrace or a dishonor on your family reaction. It's more of a, okay, we'll figure it out. So at that time, one of the boarders was living with Shinja, figures out what's going on, and he finds out, talks to her mother, and offers to marry her. So then these two, along with the unborn child, they move to Japan, to Osaka, where the baby's father lives, but doesn't know where. And from this, they are starting a new life. They're figuring out a new territory, or at least Shinja is. And I should also mention that Shinja's family is not religious, and so they don't ascribe to any beliefs. So one of the conditions of her marriage to her husband was that she would learn to accept and come to believe in Jesus Christ. And she accepts it, because she says, this man is offering to give my child his name and make him legitimate. They move to Japan. They live with the husband's brother and sister-in-law, who become very close. They're very good to Shinja, and they treat their child as his own, Noah. So that's the third generation. And then you have Noah's generation, who grows up with his son, Isaac, with his brother, Isaac. And it's really cool. And I just loved the whole dynamic of it. It was set in the backdrop of, let's say, the Japanese occupation, the Russian occupation, the American occupation, World War I, II, the Korean War. And it really is about a family and so many Koreans in exile. Because, like so many Japanese families went to Korea, set up land, and claimed Korea as their own, but Koreans were forced to leave either by choice or just really by force, and they were treated like less than in Japan. The women, they were treated as sexual playthings. The men, they were considered to be lazy and drug addicts and whatnot. Even though in Japan at the time, and even from so many of the characters saying, is that Koreans are very hardworking, And this story also reminded me of really what has gone on in the United States with the Native Americans, The explorers came, the Native Americans were displaced, and then even explorers went to Africa, the Africans were displaced, and then just so much moving around, and then there's so much prejudice and bigotry in the story against the Koreans, and it really shows what the Koreans went through. Not only in their own homeland, but in another country that was supposed to be their protector. It's mind-blowing. And then As you know, in 1953 or 54, Korea became divided permanently. North Korea went communist, and it still is to this day. And South Korea is more democratic, capitalist to this day. And, families who were separated have not been able to see each other. 50s. And we're in 2020, so a good almost 70 years. And it's just whole story. And what I really liked was that as a history major, I wasn't all that interested in Eastern countries and Eastern cultures. I guess my thing was that maybe it's because I'm from an Indian family. It's like, alright, cool, whatever. I just, as many historians, as many people who are history majors, they have a preference of what kind of history they like. I've always liked European history. I've always liked Western history. And I never really paid much attention to the Eastern culture. And this story, it really made me want to learn more about it. It made me want to do more research, And it was so freaking fantastic. I loved the audio book. And I loved the narrator. It didn't feel like she wasn't from the culture. Like, when she had to pronounce the cities and the names of the people, to me, it sounded natural. Rather than someone who has no idea how to pronounce certain words, just butchering it. And sometimes when you butcher certain pronunciations, it's obvious. Oh. And there were so many twists and turns, and that I just didn't expect. Um, it really outlined that how one decision can really alter your life in such a way and have such an effect on future generations. And it's pretty cool. The story was also very heartbreaking, you know. Um, were there any trigger warnings? Yes, gambling, addiction, suicide, attempted sexual assault, mentioned sexual assault, not explicitly, but in conversation and such. And I rated this story 5 stars. It was really a good 17, 18 hour story, so I was able to break it up. And then the last day, I only had maybe a few hours left, but it was a Friday, and I actually had to teach that day, so I was listening to it in drifts, and then the last 10%, I just curled up in bed with Nico and just listened to it. I was like, I have to listen to this, I have to listen. And also because the book was due. It was phenomenal. There's nothing I would change in it. And I really like how the story, it's just weaves, like, the historical elements, we're just weaving in through the characters' actions, through just even the background. World War One wasn't that influential to Korea, only because they were dealing with the Japanese occupation. But World War Two, definitely, because post World War Two, right after, within a couple of years, Korea entered a civil war in which the United States had to rush to their defense. So, yeah, Nico is doing well. He's currently asleep. on my lap. Everyone's asleep, and yeah, I'll see you soon. Have a great day. Have a great week. Comment, like, subscribe. If you haven't already, click the bell icon for notification. And yeah, alright, bye.